Welcome to the Forged Youth Podcast, where we are building great men as God defines greatness. Forged is a movement of men with a mission to help all men realize they are the deeply beloved, redeemed sons of the Most High God. I'm your producer, Zach, and I'm here to discuss the issues that affect men the most with our two hosts, Dr. Pete Alwinson, lifelong pastor and leader of Forge, and Jayson Quiñones, Bishop of Willow Creek Church in Oviedo, Florida. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Yeah, it's great to have us together again. Today we have a timely topic.
Yeah.
Okay. This is about something that's coming up, and we need to have we need to think biblically and critically about this issue. It is Halloween. This is our Halloween episode.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm getting the candy urge right now.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but it's much more than that, isn't it?
Now, I noticed that neither of you came in costume.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, I'm actually dressed as the bishop.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to talk about Halloween. How should a Christian approach the idea of Halloween? How should they practice Halloween in their own lives or not practice it? So that's where we're going to go. I want us to start with the history of Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay. So not everyone is familiar of like where Halloween came from, why we do Halloween. Who wants to tackle that? Bishop, you want to tackle that?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I want to just say if you are Irish, you need to repent.
That's right.
Because it is all your fault.
Yeah.
Every negative connotation connected to Halloween, it's 100% your fault.
Haven't the Irish been through enough, Jason? You need to drag them.
I know. I need deliverance.
Where's the grace? Where's the grace? You know?
Well, Jesus died for you so that way you could repent and you could receive forgiveness for this heretical introduction to the Americas. No, I'm just kidding. All jokes aside, there was some Celtic influence with this. Samhain, I think is how we pronounce it. Samhain is the original holiday. It was the ending of the summer coming into the winter. And there was a lot of superstition surrounded this time. They believed that the dead spirits walked the earth and they felt closer to them, you know, the dead, the spirits of the dead, should I say. And so they had a lot of different traditions, a lot of different superstitions surrounding that, where they were trying to ward off those spirits, you know, things like walking around. They would put costumes on that were, you know, looking like they were dead people. So in case they ran into these spirits, they wouldn't be confronted.
Right.
So, you know, things like that. And then there were some other traditions that came in later on, the trick-or-treating, things like that. So I think that is the general history that I would say. Would you guys think that that's pretty accurate? I mean,
Yeah. There
really
really was
it's longer, you know. But
it's really long and involved, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of different phases, weren't there? I mean, through how it went through generations, and then how it got over here to the United States, and the permutations. What were some of the things like bobbing for apples? What was the deal on that? How did that become a part of?
Yeah, so what I understood, and again, I just have to say this is from history.com, that, you know, we kind of read some articles there, but it had to do with superstition of single women figuring out who their husbands were going to be and things like that. I mean, they did some really crazy stuff, like they would light candles and look in a mirror to see if they could see their husband's face behind them. I thought about that and I was like, I would be horrified if a man's face popped up behind me in the middle of the dark in front of a mirror. But anyway, and then the bobbing for apples, that was one of them, throwing up apple peels and throwing them in the air and then seeing the supposed initials of their soon-to-be husband. So a lot of superstition around that, like and almost. Not almost, but this is like sorcery kind of stuff. When you think about that, I mean, these are you would connect them. You'd look at the Old Testament if you were to kind of connect those two, and these were things that these soothsayers and, you know, people were doing at that time. So that's kind of where these ideas
came from. It was a very, you know, somebody said he was talking to somebody about the Lord, and they said, well, I'm not really a religious person. Well, everybody at one time was religious at a certain point. And I think people really are religious, have their view of God or a God today. I think everybody's religious. Yeah. But back then it was certainly true. And it was demonic activity that was on the surface, on the reality, like during the times of Jesus. Yeah. You see evil on the surface. Yeah. And I think we see that same thing today. And so there was an era where it got to America, and America sort of, after the Puritans, way after the Puritans, sort of rebaptized this whole idea and made it a party, made it sort of a family time.
Now, we have people listening from, I think, over 50 different countries around the world.
Yeah.
Many of these places do not celebrate Halloween.
Oh,
so
good
can
point.
you briefly summarize what Halloween today looks like?
Yeah.
Like, what is a Halloween celebration today?
Well, it would vary, right?
Yeah.
In a suburban neighborhood in Florida and in much of our country here in America, it would be kids like in our neighborhood. We live many houses side by side, and you do too.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I believe all three of us do, right?
Yeah.
We live pretty suburban lives. So kids dressed in costumes coming around door to door in various levels of costumes, and some not really weird, but a lot weird.
Sure.
A lot demonic, a lot skeletons, a lot ghosts, a lot of those things, and asking for candy in houses. People sit out and give candy to people. It's trick or treat.
Right.
I think a quarter of all the candy sold in America is sold for Halloween.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things they said, it's the second highest revenue producing holiday, right behind Christmas.
Isn't that amazing?
So, I mean,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was, So, I mean, so it's a lot. I mean, then you have houses. I mean, you have houses, thinking about the traditions, you have houses that are decorated.
Right.
And every house that you see decorated for Halloween, not one of them is decorated without some kind of scary theme, whether, and some of them are funny, they might dress a skeleton in a football jersey or something like that, things like that. But there's a lot of fear associated with this. You have haunted houses, in our neighborhood, we have a neighbor that is, doing a haunted house. They literally have a time for trick-or-treating, time for the kids, and then they have the time for the adults to come to the haunted house. So, I mean, I think that those are things. I mean, you have different theme parks that they do. They have a high focus on scaring people.
Yeah.
Like fear, so I think that
theme
kind of
parks
shows.
go wild here in America and here in Central Florida.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of theme parks.
Plus, there's another element that you didn't mention, and that's like the college age version of Halloween, where it's like sexy Halloween. Everyone, dressing in costumes, but like just having a big, like, huge party.
Yeah, huge party that's probably akin to an orgy, if not a straight out orgy or whatever. There is that. What really, I used to have one view of it, and you're going to tell us different views how Christians should look at this. But I started changing in my view of it when the age of the trick-or-treaters got older and older. And so now you will see kids that are not middle school. I mean, they're high school, and they're big kids walking around, and some in very little costume, the bare minimum sort of costume. So it's, and I started saying to young guys, this is your last year, right? And my family said, shut up, don't say those things. But it just bugged me that young men were extending their adolescence so long. Yeah. And then it began to grip me about the evil that is on the surface in our country today. Yeah. Like in some of those areas. What did that one guy say on the video about those houses that seem to really specialize? Yeah. In Halloween.
I think his point was, so he seemed to be like a former Satanist.
Yep.
Converted to Christianity. And it's funny because when you hear these people that have come out of like Satanism and those type of cults, and they speak about Halloween, they're disgusted in the fact that Christians participate at all. Like they're anti everything. They want you to just basically, I mean, for me, it seems like they want you to just be on your knees on Halloween, and just crying out to God for mercy, right? But so what he was communicating is whenever you have those types of environments with those type of decorations around you, that those are invitations to the demonic into your neighborhood. And so that's what he was saying. And then the interviewer asked him, so what about Christians? And he was like, well, the most important thing is that you are in covenant with Christ. And then you become an intercessor praying for your neighborhood. So I think that it is important for us to not ignore people who have come out of that background and not just assume that they're radicals, because what they're saying is, man, the most human sacrifices are taking place on Halloween. That's terrible to think about when you're considering children are a target.
It's a high and holy day for evil.
Right. And so I think I think it's unwise for Christians to ignore that. But could we talk before we move on to Zach, giving us the way that we can kind of deal with this? How did the name Halloween come about? Like, because I know that when we look at the history, the church is actually trying, right? I want to give them credit that they're trying to redeem, which I think is what we should do, right? They're trying to redeem this holiday.
Yeah.
And so kind of give us a little bit of more history on that.
Yeah, from what I understand, the church did try to redeem it. And the All Hallows Tide was sort of a 3-day feast. I think it's still in the Roman Catholic Church. I can't say that for sure. I haven't double checked that, but I think it's still a 3-day feast, All Hallows Tide, which starts with a vigil on October 31st. Mm-hmm. And then the next day is All Saints Day, in which they celebrate, maybe pray to the saints with that distinctively Roman Catholic view of sainthood. And I can mention something about that. And then the next day, November 2nd, is All Souls Day, where you remember the Christian dead, but in particular pray for those dead who are in purgatory. Mm. So from a Protestant standpoint, I would have a problem with some of that. But they were trying to redeem it. Number one, the saints, our view of a saint is different, right? We view anybody who has accepted Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord is sanctified, set apart because of the righteousness of Christ that's been given to him. Whereas in the Roman Catholic view, and we have many Roman Catholic brothers who come to Forge and are part of what we do, so we interact with them on these kinds of things. But for Roman Catholic, a saint is somebody that earns more merit for themselves than they need for salvation. Right. And so as a result, they have merit to give away, and only those people are called saints. And they've done miracles supposedly and have received that redemption. And so for Protestants, All Souls Day, All Saints Day is not something that we can really pour into in that way. And then All Souls Day, again, Protestants, Bible believers of the Protestant background typically do not look at a place called purgatory. We don't find that in Scripture. Right. Or even in any of the Apocrypha, we don't see that anywhere taught whereby somebody who is apparently a Christian, put faith in Christ, has to spend time suffering for the sins that were not forgiven them in this life. Again, that seems to go against all that we know about justification by faith alone in Jesus Christ. Yeah. So the church did try to redeem Halloween. Right. With this 3-day holiday, but in my estimation, it falls far short.
Yeah, yeah. So Halloween comes from All Hallows Eve. So All Hallows Eve of all of these great celebrations, right? That's right. Yeah, and I mean, I did, again, not to bash Catholics, but I did listen to a gentleman, I think he's called the Voice of Reason. He's a Catholic apologist, and he was actually defending the celebration of Halloween. Yeah, so right. Talk to him, not us about the Catholic position, right?
That's right.
So Zach, how do you think are some ways that Christians can engage with Halloween?
Typically, there's been 3 ways that Christians have engaged with Halloween. The first one is just acceptance. So this is what we do. It's all in good fun. It's no big deal. You wouldn't notice any difference between how they participate in Halloween and how a non-Christian would participate. So,
well, let me just say this. Yeah. I think there would be a slight difference because a Christian who's accepting it, they would probably intentionally not dress in any way that is ghoulish or demonic.
Well, so that's actually what I'm going to put in my second category.
Sorry, my bad. I apologize.
So in this first category, it's someone that you wouldn't notice any difference in how they participate in Halloween. There's just a pure acceptance of the cultural norm, right? And we see this in all sorts of things, not just Halloween. We see this in how some people might celebrate Christmas or how some people might celebrate Easter or, what movies they watch, what TV shows they participate in, all that kind of stuff, right? So just, you're not going to see a difference culturally between the Christian and the non-Christian. That's the first category we're calling Christian acceptance. Second one we're going to call moderate redemption. And this is where they do want to, we do start seeing differences between how the Christian responds to Halloween and how non-Christian does, where they try to separate themselves from some of the more obvious demonic elements.
Yeah.
So they're still going to go trick-or-treating, but they're going to dress up as Superman and not like a witch or a ghost or a devil and that kind of thing. And maybe they'll decorate their house with pumpkins, but they're not going to decorate it with, skeletons and zombies, that kind of thing. So you'll start to see some separation from the culture where basically they kind of draw lines of like, I'll go this far, but not further. We're gonna take the good parts of Halloween and we're gonna reject the parts that we don't like. Okay. So that's kind of a moderate redemption. And then a third category is an intentional replacement of Halloween. So basically take Halloween as kind of like the whole thing is a poisoned apple. And we're going to try to intentionally replace it with something that's going to be countercultural. So that's where you have, there's a church near my house that has a trunk or treat. And all of the cars that have things set up, they're all missional in the sense of like, one might be, designed like Cookie Monster, and then a sign will say C is for Christ instead of C is for cookie. Like, so everything is like, pointing back to a gospel message rather than just a vacuous Halloween message. Yeah. So that would be, instead of a haunted house, a church might have a kingdom house, things like that, where they're trying to intentionally go differently than how the culture approaches Halloween to basically underline the point and send a message that like, no, we want to do this very differently.
Yeah.
So that would kind of be the third category that we're calling intentional replacement.
So the Christian acceptance one is sort of, we just go along with it. It's all in good fun. Yeah. I think that reveals sort of a superficial Christianity. I think those are, I'd have to say right out of the blocks that if you just go along and you don't care what your kids wear and there's no discernment there, you need to think more deeply about it. And we'd call you to that and realize that it is at one level certainly a high and holy day for evil. Yeah. And so you got to think more deeply about it. And none of us had that view. I didn't have that view raising our kids. We went really with the moderate redemption view, which was we said our kids, you can trick or treat. We'll go with you, obviously, but you can't wear demons or anything like that. And they didn't want to, but we trained them. Sure. And so that's kind of how we did. How about you, Bishop?
Yeah, well, let me just say something before I answer that question, because as you were talking about the just complete acceptance, I think about, first of all, you look at movies, Halloween, the movies, Friday the 13th, you look at Nightmare on Elm Street, you look at all of the things that start coming around, even Beetlejuice, like those types of things. These are all things that are subtle and not so subtle, but it's all about fear. It's about instilling fear. And we know who the author of this fear is, right? It's not God, it's the enemy. And so thinking about when I was younger, I remember in our neighborhood, man, Halloween night was a scary night. And it wasn't because, the decorations, it was because of the spirit of the night. There's just, I don't care what anybody says, there is a spirit. And the darker places in the neighborhood were even more scary, for a teenage guy. It was just not a good environment. And so I think that's really important for parents to consider when you're thinking about how to deal with that. So from the acceptance part, I would say, no, we've always been on what was the third one?
The intentional replacement.
The intentional replacement. So our church has done a fall fest, we haven't done one every single year. It's funny, for a couple of years we didn't do it. And my daughter was like, what are we doing? Like, we're not gonna trick or treat because we don't believe in that. And so that was, we sit in the room in the dark, in the back, all the lights off, because we didn't even try to engage the neighbors necessarily. So that was that's kind of where we've always been. And it's funny because sometimes you feel judgy, like when you hear somebody, oh, well, we went trick or treating, like, man, what kind of Christian are you? But I think I want to say this. I believe that there should be grace for that, because I do think, number one, you can walk and you can be a light that's shining in the midst of that darkness. I think that you can, participate in that in a way with good conscience, not just accepting, but saying, hey, we're going to be different in this. And I think probably I would say, I would probably not go as far as taking my kids to trick or treat, but I would say a good way to engage is being home when the trick-or-treaters come, so you can bless them and, you have that opportunity. So that's what I would think if we were going to do it.
So you haven't put an absolute no on trick-or-treating, but you would say your conviction is okay, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But we will engage.
Yeah.
Theologically, I was of the opinion that, Christians redeem pagan holidays. And why do we have Christmas trees? Well, pagans had Christmas trees hanging in their houses from the ceiling down. The Norwegian Vikings did, looking toward the spring. It was a kind of a sign of hope for them, and we've redeemed it. We put a cross on the top or an angel on the top. And so I was sort of the opinion that the gospel can redeem all kinds of things,
right,
and turn neutral and bad things into good things,
right,
to use for the gospel. So that's kind of where I was at before.
Well, and I would say too, I had a really cool conversation with my nephew yesterday, and he was talking about a young lady that he's kind of courting and having discussions with. She's a new Christian, just recently baptized. And so they were talking about Halloween, and he was like, yeah, man, I was telling her that she wanted to go to this Halloween party. And I was like, I don't know, we should go to that. And she's like, well, why not? And he's like, well, what are they going to be doing at this party? He's like, well, they're going to be drinking, they're going to listen to, ungodly music, so on and so forth. He's like, so do you think we should be in an environment like that?
Yeah, right.
We're probably going to engage with that, right? And I think, and again, I'm only expressing my conviction where I'm like, man, for my kids, I want to make sure that they're either trained very well, like, man, we're not opening the door to participation in a way that we shouldn't, or B, we're just not going to participate. So, but Zach, what about you? We gave ours.
That's good.
Yeah. I admit that I've been relatively uncritical about my stance on Halloween. I would probably fall into that second category with my kids. I mean, they trick or treat, but they dress up as like, a princess and and things like that. My son was a Ninja Turtle last year.
Yeah.
But I would never even consider having them dress up as like a ghost or a witch or a zombie or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, it's not something that I have really examined and formed a theology around, which is not a good idea. I mean, really, the goal of a Christian is to methodically go through your heart and your life and examine everything by the lens of Christ.
Yes.
And so, I'm still growing and maturing and figuring those things out. So I'm glad you guys are bringing this up as something to think critically about. But yeah, right now where we're at, we're kind of in that second category where we reject the things about Halloween that I don't like and don't fit with my faith.
Yeah.
And we warmly embrace the free candy.
Speaking of the candy, I got to say this, and I appreciate that. I think a lot of the men that listen to us are probably in that category. Wow, I haven't thought about it that much. And my church is doing a trunk or treat or a fall festival, and I'm going to be a part of that. That's kind of a replacement idea. Yeah. But the one issue that hit me as I was looking at this even deeper is where the trick or treating came from. It was during the time when the church was trying to really redeem Halloween, and so the poor would go by houses asking for soul cakes. And basically the idea is the poor were hungry. And so people would feed them, give them soul cakes if they would pray for their family members that were in purgatory. And so that's where kind of the trick-or-treating kind of came in. Yeah. I promise I'll pray for your dead family in purgatory if you give me something to eat. And wow, that was a little bit sobering for me. Of course, that's not what's going on today.
Sure.
That's not what's going on today.
Yeah.
So what would it look like to have intentional replacement? What would that be if somebody gets to that point? What would you do?
Well, I think one of the things Jason was mentioning about how his church does a big fall festival on Halloween is the idea that there is a unique opportunity, right? That you don't have the rest of the year to engage with your neighbors and strangers, right?
Yep.
For the most part in our culture, like when you encounter a stranger, you can say hi and have some pleasantries and that kind of thing. But there's very little engagement with people that are not in your lives. Even in your own neighborhoods, most people don't know most of their neighbors.
That's true.
And
in America, at least.
Exactly. Yes. And so there is an opportunity that Halloween provides in order to have that kind of engagement, which is pretty unique. And I think this third category of the intentional replacement is trying to make the most of that opportunity.
I think it really is. It's interesting. In my family, one of my sons is he lives in a great neighborhood up north, and they got great costumes because we've seen the pictures, incredible. And they're gonna have a neighborhood. They're gonna do around the neighborhood trick or treating, but their neighborhood's very tight, and so they're gonna do a lot of things together. Another one of my sons is going to have a replacement party. He's decided he's just going to have a party out there, and they're not going to do anything like that in particular. Yeah. So I think, I think it's good for us to think these things through and process that whole thing. Meanwhile, I think we should pray. I think that should be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think prayer is imperative, right, in these moments, because we have to realize no matter what you do, wherever you are, I think that, again, going back to what people who have come out of these cultic practices have made clear, and they're not just making these practices up. They're looking at the history of Samhain and all of that, and they're saying, hey, there's this moment where the spirit world is more open, and so and that superstition that is there, Satan looks for any crack. So I think being in prayer is important. I would say also, don't violate your conscience. It's this is a conscience issue as well. And so don't say, hey, so-and-so is just accepting and they're just doing whatever. And so I'm going to do that because I don't want to be the judgy Christian, even though in the back of your mind or in your heart, you feel like there's something wrong. Don't ignore that. And if you may need to move further along in thinking about, man, I want to intentionally redeem this, or, I want to be a moderate, redeemer in that sense. And I would say, I think another thing is important is we need to know why we're doing what we're doing. Don't just listen to a guy's video and be like, oh, that's it, I'm done with Halloween.
That's right.
Research,
think it through.
Right.
I like Zach's point is that all of life needs to come under Christ's leadership and lordship. And that's what Christians do. They rethink everything once they come to faith in Christ. So good point on that. And this is certainly in that category. Yeah.
And today when you were speaking, you said that, should we trick or treat? And you were like, no, we shouldn't. And I was like, yeah, because we're too old. But that was my thought.
If you're out there, Bishop, man, that's no good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought of a way to redeem egging someone's house. Is you could save the eggs from Easter until Halloween and use those eggs to do it.
Oh, man, you have a deviancy that is very deep, man. I want you to know.
This is proof that Halloween is demonic.
Total depravity. Yeah, total depravity runs deep. Oh, man.
It brings out the worst in you, man.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's fun to talk about these things with you. And like I said, we want to put everything under the microscope of Christ.
Right.
And reevaluate all of our decisions, all of our choices, and that takes time. That's a lifelong effort. And so it's great to talk about these things with you. I hope we do more episodes that are kind of timely and deal with our culture. But for right now, it's time to leave you today. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Forge Truth Podcast. If you gained anything from it, you want to join the conversation, you can email us at forge@forgetruth.com. You can also share the show with a friend, and we would appreciate that quite a bit. Jason, will you leave us with a challenge for the men today?
Yeah, guys, I think the ultimate reality is that we are supposed to do all things for the glory of God. And so, however you choose to celebrate or not celebrate, you need to be convinced in your heart that all things that you are doing are for His glory. And that's it.